You're a student of capitalism, of business of all kinds. Is there any other alternative that offers any promise other than capitalism? I think capitalism has been the source of the change in how we live on this planet for the last 150 years. That's just frankly remarkable.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of academic studies that would support your point of view. From my end, it's fairly uncomplicated, and that is that what are the underpinnings? The rule of law with all the flaws. I mean, look at what's going on in parts of the world, even today in this world that we're living in. Then you have, in addition to that, the notion of the free market, where you can make a lot of mistakes, like you're talking about now in healthcare. Somebody comes up with an idea, they got to go out and raise venture capital. Somebody's going to lose money, somebody's going to make money. And the notion of allowing that to function. There are problems occasionally with companies that would make a chemical that needed to be fixed. But the best of all alternatives. And then the third part, which is very important to me, is meritocracy.
Yep.
And the underpinning of that is education, and that's why we have to continue to focus on that.
How do you think, Mario, about philanthropy, your activities? Because you seem to be extremely philanthropic, and you seem to be especially focused on education. And just not.
Well, the rationale for that is fairly uncomplicated. Basically, I was left back in the first grade. I was a truant. Mm-hmm. I had two parents that didn't speak much English. My father was born in Western Pennsylvania. His father died in a coal mining accident. At the age of 2, went back to Italy, blah, blah, blah. They come back. So she grabs me, sticks me into a school, religious school in the Bronx. And they said, there's a slapping machine upstairs. If you cut out of class, you're going to get hit. And if you still do it, there's a police station across the street. So I never cut out of class. I wound up going to a high school that the tuition was XYZ, and I got scholarships on that. I went to Fordham Prep, and then I went to Fordham, and that same thing. I cobbled together scholarships. I went to Columbia, same thing. I got scholarships. So the notion of giving back through education is very fundamental. Yeah. And part of what I'd like to do is obviously help first gen. That is, those individuals that are going to school for the first time and then need financial help. Mm-hmm. And not only do we try to help them with regards to negotiation, ask for a bigger discount. What we want to do is go back to grammar school and help, or I call it grammar school, elementary school, and they would basically start teaching things like simple 101s of finance, like opening a bank account, understand how to not overspend on the debit card, credit cards, and so on. And then allow them to start thinking about keeping options open, financial options for the next 40 years of their life. So it's a total education.
At a Catholic grammar school in Queens, we all had our little savings books at the dime savings bank. And they'd go around collecting them. You'd put your, whatever you could afford to put in, $1 a week or a month or whatever it was, into your savings account. So we had a savings account from first and second grade. I don't know what it was.
It's a good way to start.
Yep.
It worked.
We chatted earlier about what's going on in the markets today. Good opportunity for individual investors? Is this a target-rich environment when people are nervous, or is it a time to be more cautious? You advise, you manage a lot of people's money.
Well, you do it for all of the above. If you take the volatility of the world and cycles and manias, you can read a book written in 1853, about the tulip bulbs in Amsterdam and Holland, about the canals and about everything else, railroads and so on in subsequent periods. You'll go through these cycles. 1921 was not particularly helpful, but you can go 1893, 1907, 1919, and the panics in the United States and so on. 1972-3 with the Nifty 50. The 2000 period with .com, 07, 8, 9 with the banks, and now you have Wuhan, you have Russian invasion, you have the bank crisis, you have a Mideast crisis, and you got a house divided. So, but you step back, Jim, and what you look at is the following. If I had invested 100 years ago, according to the studies that come out of like Ipsen and so on, you had a 10% CAGR. And you had some really wild markets during that period. I don't think we're going to do as well because the multiples are high and markets are adjusting over the next 3 or 4 years. But on a balance over the next 40 years, I think you're going to make 8 or 9%. So if I had the Dow Jones at 33,000 today,
Yeah.
and it was 1,000 when I started in Wall Street in 1967, and when I started my firm in 1977, it was still 1,000. And you could have made a lot of money in those 10 years.
is flat. First
Yeah.
10 years you're in business.
Yeah,
Amazing.
but today, 40 years from now, when you and I are here in 2063, 4, 5, 6, something like that, the Dow will be 1 million. So if I'm talking to students, I tell them one less beer, one less Starbucks with an Americano in it, and put the money into account the way you had your little savings account put together. That was terrific. From my end, I started buying stocks when I was 13. What happened is I used to caddy, go from the Bronx to a country club in Westchester called Sunningdale Country Club. I started with Wingfoot because they didn't care how old you were. I started at 12 when you had to be 13, but they wouldn't give me doubles though. Sunningdale did. And it was $1.50 a bag. And these were the big leather bags.
Oh, yeah.
Because most of the caddies were bussed in from Yonkers, there was a caddy bus. I would be able to stay later. And the individuals that were specialists would come up and play 9 holes.
Yeah.
And they talked stocks.
And you're listening.
So I listened. And I said, yeah, why not? Think about a term that I used about 30 years ago, and I use today in schools. It's called PhD. We used to say poor, hungry, and driven. Then we said, now it's passionate, hungry, and driven. The attitude that we look in individuals in terms of their career options. And so that's what we focus on, and that is, what do I like doing? Okay, my wife will read 3 books a week. I'll read, 8 to 10 annual reports when they come in.
Yeah.
Or more. My philosophy has been to work from 5 to 9. I used to work from like 10 in the morning till midnight, but you changed the time frame. So basically, I did that, and somebody looks at me, didn't you say something wrong? Didn't you mean 9 to 5? So the culture that I live through and currently continue to practice doesn't work for everyone.
Yep.
At the same time, you got to have a passion for what you want to do. And sometimes that changes. And as a result, keep your options open. So think about creativity, think about work, and think about what you're doing. I don't give any other advice than that.